You must tell me all your secrets. Remember, we must share everything together. Everything.
Quite a long face, Horace.
I'm just having a little girl trouble.
Pressing charges. I get that a lot.
Holden McNeil was set in his ways. The way he worked. The way he lived. And the way he thought love should be. But then, she showed up.
Let me guess. You like her.
This girl loves me.
There's something you should know.
She got a boyfriend.
Well, no.
Then what's to know, my friend?
And this girl's got a secret that's going to drive him crazy.
I like you, Holden. But I'd really like us to be friends.
What'd I tell you? She just needs the right guy.
What's up?
And if you come pick me up, I'll be your best friend.
Now, the only thing standing in Holden's way is the truth.
I can't take this.
Can't take what?
I love you. Not in a friendly way.
How was your pseudo date?
Okay, I'm telling you, she's never even been with a guy.
You're dating a guy?
So what if it is true?
You know you have no shot at getting her into bed.
I take it that's not good.
Miramax Films presents a comedy that tells it like it feels.
She's been around and seen things we've only read about in books.
So what'd you do last night?
Got lucky.
Chasing Amy.
Okay. I've never seen that trailer before.
No.
Yes. So the Miramax guy voice is really over the top in that one. So welcome back to Girls, Guts, and Giallo. This is Annie Rose Malamet. And I'm here today with my coworker and friend, Michael Carroll.
Hello.
Hi, Michael. And we're giving you the episode today that nobody asked for. We're talking about Chasing Amy, of course.
Can I set an intention on this episode?
Yes.
Let's have a catharsis.
Yes. Okay.
Let's
this is a catharsis.
process this.
Yeah, we're processing our trauma around this movie. And yeah, why did we pick this movie, Michael? Why? When did you first see it?
I saw it opening weekend.
That's intense.
With my dad.
Okay.
Late 96. I saw the film Clerks. Blew my mind. To this day, a movie that reverberates with me, means a lot to me, and just totally smitten with film for all sorts of reasons it's a whole other processing thing. And then like literally months later, it's like, oh, he's got another movie coming out. And so my friends and I got on our bikes. We went to go see it. They wouldn't let us in. I called my mom. I said, you have to come watch this movie with me. She said, I'm cleaning the fridge. I'll send your dad. My dad fucking hated it. Anyway.
So this is actually so perfect. I didn't even know that the first time you saw it was with your dad, because the first time I saw this movie was with my dad. So
we're cool people.
Yeah, he rented it from Netflix.
Oh.
When it was DVDs, and God knows why. Mm-hmm. And I watched.
He was in it, Jason Lee.
I think Netflix was like recommending him things, and he knew I loved like indie, artsy stuff. So he was like, "Oh, watch this movie with me." So I learned about fisting with my dad. Yeah. So.
What time of the day were you watching this?
Nighttime.
Nighttime.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Like I used to watch a lot of movies with my dad at night. Yeah. So it was, he didn't help me process any of that. I don't even think he knew how to process
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I at least had my friends with me. We were in a public space.
Right. No,
you know,
I was like in my den with my father watching Chasing Amy.
Probably more comfortable for your father than mine, you know, but like for us, I think I got the better deal there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it made a really big impression on me. I think at the time I saw it, I want to say like 12 or 13.
Okay.
And at the time, I thought it was a really good movie.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, later watching it as an adult, I was horrified by it. And now I find it to be a really interesting historical artifact.
Yeah. So we were texting and I mentioned this, but this is the third time in about as many years as I have gone back to this film. I started it 2 years ago, just late at night, and I couldn't get 5 minutes into it. And when we go through it, I'll tell you exactly where I just was like, I can't fucking watch this. And then for another project, I watched it again last year for a little bit, and I was like, this is the worst kind of bad movie because it's like, you know, there's all sorts of bad movies, but there's like the bad movie that like reminds you of something vulnerable within yourself. Like, because this movie meant so much to me then and was so important to me then, and I thought was so smart then, and now I'm like, man, I was stupid when I was 15.
But you know, maybe it was smart then.
So that's what this third. I was like trying to be as generous to both the film and myself at that time as I could be. So. Yeah, I'm still unpacking, but anyway.
Like you said, this is going to be a very cathartic episode.
Yeah, and
we decided. I originally, when we talked about doing the show together, I wanted to have you on to do Clerks.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I wanted to have you on to do Clerks is because we were at a staff holiday party, and I had an interaction where I was just bored, bored with whatever people were talking about. So I was like. I said to them that I'm gonna go hang out with the film bros.
Yeah.
So I wandered over. You and the other film bros were eating like some other party's food and talking about Clerks.
Remember, but that makes sense.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about Clerks, and I was like, I am home.
Yeah.
Against everything in me, I will always be like. Kind of a film bro, and I think that's like the rub for so many women who get into film is like we get into it through these kind of heralded male indie auteurs. And at the time when Clerks came out, that was a big deal. And I mean, we can talk about Kevin Smith in more detail. Like, he had his time and his place, and he doesn't really need that time and place. And he doesn't need that space anymore. But at the time, there was something there.
Yeah, for sure.
And Clerks really got me into like Slacker and like all of that kind of like suburban, mundane, you know, absurdist, realist.
Yeah, I mean the '90s. The '90s. So much of the '90s was like fast-paced storytelling, and like it was a very West Coast decade. I've heard some people describe it as, and you know, there was something so that felt so subversive, or you just felt like seen where it was just like people like a couple of shitty people like on the East Coast who are like bored, or you know, there's ennui, and I think that's how most people experienced a lot of the '90s, and yet so much of the media did not reflect that.
Interesting. Yeah, and this is another reason that it's good to have you on this episode, because I kind of just missed all that. Like I'm
fucking old. I get it. Yeah.
I was born in 1990, so I was not like a sentient human being
Sure.
when this was going on. I can only see it as in nostalgia,
Mhm.
and you actually experienced
there.
that. Yeah. So
Well, I wasn't there. You know, that was one of the. It was so funny because I remember like seeing Clerks. Yeah, it had come out like 2 years before. It was made maybe 3 years before, and I remember being like, "Oh, I missed the boat. If I could only have seen this in the theater," you know. But that was so long ago, 2 years. You know.
yeah. Now and I meanwhile I was watching it on the IFC channel.
Yeah.
In 2002.
Mhm.
You know, so it's.
I think by that point Dogma had come out, and I had kind of just been like, okay, whatever. This guy's kind of.
Oh my God! I thought Dogma was so deep when I saw it.
That was my breaking point. That you know.
Yeah, well, you were older
by
than
that
me.
By that point, I was like 18. And I was like,
I know. I was like 12.
I was expecting a little bit more, guys.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And you know, just to really drive home how old you are,
Yeah.
so how Gen X you are wearing a flannel shirt today. So it, you know, everything is really lining up. And then, you know, I decided that we should do Chasing Amy because I feel like if anybody is going to talk about this movie, it should be a dyke and a straight man.
Here we are.
And here we are. And this is going to be a really deep processing session. I think it's going to be really good. I think a lot of people are going to cringe when they see this come up in their feed, but I think we have the chops to talk about it.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So, Chasing Amy, 1997, written and directed by Kevin Smith, starring Ben Affleck with the worst facial hair ever, Joey Lauren Adams, and Jason Lee, terrible bangs, and Dwight Ewell.
Delightful.
Yes, who isn't listed as starring in the film, but I would argue that he does.
Easily.
Yeah. So this film, it was, like you were saying, it's made during Kevin Smith's heyday. He came to prominence through Clerks, which was 1994.
Yeah, $27,000 budget
for Clerks.
For Clerks, you know, it was just rags to riches story. It was like the dream that we all had at the time.
Right.
You know, like
black and white.
Just put it all on the line to make one feature that's like your statement, and like then, you know, next step, profit. And then he had made a bigger budget film with Mallrats, and then that had tanked, and then this was his 200, I think it was like 250,000, so 10 times the budget of Clerks, but still not like seven figures, you know. This, you know, to make this his return to smaller personal films.
Okay.
Air quotes on everything.
Yeah,
but,
right. Because,
yeah.
I mean, listen to that Miramax trailer. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's more of a big budget fear.
Real quick, my favorite part about that trailer is, and I knew that because when this is how I used to use the internet. I used to like download trailers from the Miramax website and just watch them over and over again.
Amazing. I did very similar
like
things.
The Windows 95.
Yeah.
And even then, you know, there's the scene where it's like Ben Affleck's like, "What'd you do last night?" They're playing Seaball, and she goes, "I got lucky," and that's clearly like either not her voice or it's 80 yards later
because
because I think she said "got laid."
Yes.
You know, it's just like
can't say that. Yeah, so
Anyway.
it's an absurd trailer.
I'm going to try and stay focused. Go ahead.
We got a lot of time.
Okay, great.
And this Clerks, like I said, was when I saw it, it was one of my favorite movies. And probably because it reminded me of like the dirtbags I dated in high school. Like I didn't see, it's the interesting thing about ever being a woman watching anything. I didn't see myself in the movie, but I saw people I was familiar with. I mean, I'm from the tri-state suburbs, you know, like it just felt very relatable to me. So Smith was inspired by Richard Linklater, the film Slacker, which I mentioned, also another one of my favorites. I hope to do an episode on it one day.
Delightful film.
And I wanted to hear a little bit more about your relationship to Kevin Smith's films.
Well, yeah, so I think I kind of laid out like what everything was like leading up. I think he first got on my radar because I was reading a shit ton of Marvel comics in the 90s. And I saw an advertisement in one of the comics for a movie called Mallrats, and it prominently featured that Stan Lee was going to have a cameo. And at that time, this really dates me. I was like, a movie with Stan Lee in a cameo? That's outrageous.
Wow.
And then I was holding a fucking monkey's paw, and I was like, God, I wish there were more films like this.
Oh my God, it's your fault.
and then I was like hanging out with, I had some friend who was like, hey, my dad rented this rated R movie, and it was Clerks, and then I saw
this rated R movie.
Yeah, and then I saw Mallrats, and then Chasing Amy, and then it felt like I spent like a long time waiting, pining for Dogma to come out, because I read the script online and I thought it was like, this is going to really like require him to really come into his own as a visionary director, but he's got it in him. And then I saw it, I was like, oh boy, you don't have it in you. And it was really difficult because I brought all my friends and they knew that he meant a lot to me, and they were like, I thought it was pretty good, and I was like, guys, that movie was bullshit. Like, that was stupid, and you're stupid for this is probably literally how I was talking at the time. And then really for me, the 90s, like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back really is like December 31st, 1999 for me. Like that was sort of like putting to bed a lot of, it's a film that I remember seeing and thinking, boy, that's really good. And then also going, I think that night that I tried to watch Chasing Amy for the first time, I turned it off, and then I put on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and I was like, this is good, except there's like way too many gay jokes. So
yeah,
asterisk on that for later.
Putting a pin in it.
And then basically, yeah, and then like, I went to college 2 weeks after Jay and Silent Bob came out, and 9/11 happened, changed like everything in the world, and then like I just didn't give a shit about, he made Jersey Girl, which I've still to this day never seen.
It's kind of cute.
Is it?
Yeah, but it's very like, it's a rom-com.
Okay, I'm very interested, mostly because I'm very interested in like sensitive Ben Affleck. I'm just like putting Chekhov's gun on the shelf.
Can you please program a film series of sensitive Ben Affleck? He recently tweeted about this film because somebody, oh God, I forget their name. Somebody, I will link it for sure for people, but someone did a TED Talk. A queer person did a TED Talk on what Chasing Amy means to them, and Ben Affleck retweeted it. So it's on his radar.
Yeah.
The film was inspired by the Guinevere Turner movie. She actually makes a cameo in this movie as well. It's in her seminal lesbian classic, Go Fish. And
have you seen Go Fish? Do you like Go Fish?
I have, yeah. It's a 90s lesbian movie. Like I have a certain, place in my heart.
Yeah.
And Smith's relationship with Joey Lauren Adams.
Yes.
Who I don't know what her personal life is, but I'm going to assume is some shade of queer, if this movie is reflecting any of their relationship.
I mean, I never got that impression. I thought that it was just like he was sort of mixing. He was dating her at the time. This is all like I used to like absorb all these interviews and like really like created like a mythos of all these films in my head, and now I'm trying to like remember them all, and it was half my life ago. But yeah, I think that he was dating her and she was like a muse for him, but then but then mixed with that was he had this friendship, with
Guinevere Turner.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So
but who knows?
Right. This is the third film in Kevin Smith's View Askewniverse series, which is the dumbest name. It's a fictional universe where the Jay and Silent Bob characters appear in almost all the films.
Yeah. And
the same actors are present in many of the films and play the same characters.
Yeah, and sometimes you have like the same actor playing different characters. Yeah.
Is that
one of the funner parts of Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back is that they know this and they're playing with that.
Okay.
But then there's actually more instances of that even in Chasing Amy, but we'll get to that.
We'll get there. So the film received pretty positive reviews at the time, with Roger Ebert and Quentin Tarantino saying that it was his best work so far.
Yeah, Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars.
Right. Yeah. But the film is very controversial, especially among queer women, and many feel that it is an insulting portrayal of queerness laden in misogynistic tropes.
What?
What?
Record scratch.
Yeah, right. So I felt like it was important to talk about this film because it's extremely culturally loaded. So let's talk about the plot.
Okay.
We open with this montage of comic book images of the Jay and Silent Bob characters.
Blunt Man and Chronic. Yeah.
Blunt Man and Chronic as these superheroes. And also these newspaper clippings about the comic book artists.
Yeah.
Holden McNeil and Banky Edwards.
And it's interesting because what they're actually sort of they're putting in stuff from Comic Shop News, which was a free weekly that you would get in like comic book stores at the time. And it's sort of showing their rise to prominence. And then like they're on the cover of Wizard magazine, which was like, in 1997 would have been like a pretty big deal. It's sort of, if you didn't know what was going on in comics at the time, they're kind of showing like a certain rise in popularity. But also I remember at the time thinking like Wizard did like almost exclusively, as I recall, like Marvel and DC stuff, and like they never would have put like anything like that on their cover. Right. But there's a weird fantasy element about like what the indie comic book scene was like at the time.
There's a subcultural joke here, right? That goes over my head because I don't know anything about comics. So
I actually think if I just to get this out of the way, I think that he's really using so much of this film this film is him like kind of talking to himself and reflecting to himself and thinking about himself and using other people to mirror himself in some way, but I think that he's using the comic book industry in a lot of ways to like reflect his own like career in film at the time. So,
that makes sense. Yeah. So we're kind of immediately placed into this world of like buddy comedies. We get the two main characters, right? Jason Lee, Ben Affleck, and male nerdery, right? Like that's immediately with that opening sequence. And now we're in 90s New York City.
Yeah.
At the 3rd annual Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Only 3 so far. It's amazing. And we get like a nice overview of a 90s Comic-Con.
There's a guy who has a T-shirt that says Marvel sucks, and then and then they cut to one of the Mike Allred, the artist, is there, and it's funny because he's clearly the artist who did all the work for Blunt Man and Chronic. So if you knew what was going on, it was kind of an Easter egg, but also it's like fucking confusing because like anyway.
Right,
yeah,
I get it.
It's maybe part of the fun, but he never has fun with it.
Interesting. Yeah. So we meet Holden and Banky. Holden.
Awful names.
Terrible names.
Yeah.
Holden, Ben Affleck, Banky, Jason Lee. They both look terrible. They're the creators of the comic Blunt Man and Chronic, and they're being harassed by some nerds at their Comic-Con booth.
Yeah, it's his opening line.
Oh yeah, Michael has the script.
Yeah, his opening line, Ben Affleck's opening line, some fan is like gushing over how he thinks of them, how he thinks of these characters, like they're like Cheech and Chong, and Holden says, "I like to think of them as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern meets Vladimir and Estragon," and my note here is "fuck you."
Yeah. That I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, dude.
This is how you're choosing to introduce this character, and this is how he's going to endear me, the audience, to you.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
And then introducing Jason Lee. So, watching this 2 years ago, like I saw Weinstein's name show up on screen.
That's a good point.
And then here we are 5 minutes into the movie, and there's Jason Lee's character is introduced where he's getting harassed by a fan, and then he is nudging the guy behind him in line. The guy behind him in line is Casey Affleck, also alleged rapist. And that's when I was like, I can't fucking watch this movie.
Yeah, it's just everything. I mean, looking back on this era, it's like, wow, there's just
these are all nice guys.
Predators everywhere.
These are all just like nice, cool guys.
Yeah, that's yeah, and I definitely talk about the nice guy trope in my notes, so we'll get there. So Holden, he draws the comics, and Banky inks the comics.
Yeah.
So there's immediately this tension.
Yeah.
Right, and we see how insecure Banky is about being an inker. This is going to be a theme for their entire dynamic. Banky attacks and chokes a man who was mocking him for being an inker, so he's got a temper also. And now we move to this bizarre scene of the Minority Comics panel discussion.
Yeah.
And we meet Dwight Ewell, who plays the character Hooper X, which is a play on Malcolm X. And he is a Black comic book artist who is speaking at the convention in a garb that would be recognizable as a traditional Black Panther outfit.
Yeah.
And he,
Black Panther, not the Marvel superhero. Black Panther, like
as in the Black radicals. And he's standing at a podium discussing his comic and discussing the traditionally racist nature of superhero comics, which is actually like pretty spot on, everything that he's saying. But he's almost kind of like a parody of a Black Power activist, and he's using radical language in a parodic manner.
He's very stoic and sort of like lecturing to like a white audience, but like about Star Wars,
right?
Like,
yeah, it's very much like a Black activist written by a white man, right? So it's very cringe. And Holden interrupts him from the audience and starts antagonizing him,
heckling,
and talking about Lando Calrissian from Star Wars. I'm sorry, I don't know shit about Star Wars. I know who that is though. And Hooper.
Congratulations, you win.
I know. I that's like, it's like my superpower is like not getting mad about any Star Wars shit on Twitter.
Oh. Cool.
I'm like, I don't know what's going on at all.
Yeah.
And Hooper starts to discuss why Star Wars is racist, saying that because Darth Vader is an old white man under his helmet, that the movie is saying that Black people want to be white. And Banky stands up and says, well, isn't that true? And Hooper pulls out a gun out of his jacket and shoots Banky, screaming Black rage.
Okay, but rewind just a second. Did you think when you were 12 and you first saw this that Hooper was saying some interesting shit?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, he has a point.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting, like regurgitating, clearly Malcolm X had come out 1993, 1992, 1993,
around there,
and Kevin
it was in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and exactly. And Kevin Smith, was like absorbing this.
And Kevin Smith loves Spike Lee.
Yeah, exactly. And you see him coming from a good place. Maybe,
he's like a.
Yeah.
He's. I don't even know. He thinks he's coming from a good place.
Yeah.
I think is more what it is.
He's
he's
not listening, but he's talking, and he thinks he's.
I think he thinks the character of Hooper is very interesting, and probably him and Alyssa are the most interesting characters in the movie.
Sure.
Obviously, right? And
what if I disagreed?
Actually. Really like Banky. Yeah. So
his name is Banky.
There's some interesting things going on with his character. Like there are some things that Kevin Smith maybe gets accidentally sort of correct, and then other things where it's like, Kevin Smith, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So this scene is particularly interesting. I mean, the whole he shoots Banky in the leg and, screaming Black rage, and Holden doesn't budge. The audience flees in terror. And Hooper approaches Banky, and this is when we learn that this entire incident is like a bit that they do at conventions. And
the gun was a blank.
Right. And we see that Hooper is a flamboyant gay man who says that he does this bit because it goes with the image of his comic and it makes it easier to sell. So it's implied that he has to be this image of perfect radical black masculinity.
Yeah.
There's no space for nuance for him. He can't also be gay.
Yeah. And sort of one of my notes here on that is like, what is the fantasy market that Kevin Smith thinks exists that like a comic book artist can have something like this happen in a convention and it boosts the sales of his small print
First of all, the
comic
police
book with like
would
a
be
slur.
there immediately.
Yeah, well, I think they say that like his publisher pays for like the something.
Okay,
it's
absurd.
It's a fantasy. It's a weird, but it's also like because this is the second time. Like in the scene before, Banky gets into a fight with the guy over the inking stuff, and then the police pulled him away, and like there's just a weird like sense of like where cops are and this stuff, and it's all for comedic effect and not for verisimilitude, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, giving him the benefit of the doubt, but like it just. I don't know. The movie feels too grounded. It's not like Leslie Nielsen comedy or something like that.
Right. It's like decide what you want to be. Like
there's tone shifts.
Right. Are you an absurdist comedy or are you like a
Yeah, like in Mallrats that would have worked. Maybe. But in something like this, it just he's kind of having his cake and eating it too. I think.
Yeah, and I mean the character of Hooper is interesting also because Kevin Smith does have an understanding that Black men are not allowed to have nuance in their public personas. So he sees that. Yeah. But then doesn't really go anywhere with it. Yeah. Like he just kind of presents it.
Yeah.
So Hooper teases Banky, kissing him on the face. And this is when we first see that Banky is homophobic. And although he's probably the kind of person who wouldn't think that because he hangs out with people like Hooper. So he probably thinks he's not homophobic.
Yeah.
And we meet Alyssa, who says to Hooper, "Why do you sound like Louis Farrakhan on stage, but the king of pop when you're off stage?" They have a rapport. Whoa. I was like, the king of pop.
Yeah.
And Hooper and Alyssa are friends. And Banky says he knows who Alyssa is and accuses her comic Idiosyncratic Routine of being chick stuff. So he's homophobic and sexist.
Yeah.
Right, because Alyssa...
Nobody's nerfing.
Because Alyssa writes this comic that, in my understanding, is more of like a human interest.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like Love and Rockets.
Yes, exactly.
There was no shortage of stuff like there
Which
was a
I
market.
do love.
Yeah. There's a market for stuff like that back then. That was very like a lot of like really great autobiographical stuff. But also like what was her name, Julie Doucette. There were a lot of, and to this day there are still I think a lot of great like.
And the '90s had a rich zine culture among feminists and women and queer people, and I think that it's a nod to that in a way, which is again interesting on his part. Like he gets some things right.
When I kind of like I remember like seeing the cover to that I think is shown in the movie at one point, but anyway, through all the promotional art and everything, I would see this and I would think, oh yeah, so that would be it would be printed on cheap newsprint. It would be black and white. Like the only color would be on the cover. It'd probably be like $1 more expensive than like getting a Marvel comic, but that's because it's for like a boutique audience.
Right.
Like that did feel right.
Right.
And interesting. And like if you were into comics at the time, like, they're showing you something that like in a movie you never got to see.
Right. Well, that's another big aspect of this movie is like bringing a subculture to a larger audience because there's so much in knowledge in this film.
Yeah.
So Holden is obviously taken with Alyssa, and Alyssa and Hooper are joking about always being on minority panels together, and they make
because she's a girl,
right,
and he's a black man.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what they mean by minority panels.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
A white woman.
Yeah.
And maybe a black man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, did you go into the film knowing, like, at least the broad strokes of the plot?
When I first saw it when I was a kid, no.
No. Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, so I came in knowing that, she's obviously gay, and
I didn't
like,
know anything.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like, yeah. That was a little confusing. I remember when I first saw it, because I was like, oh, I guess they're not saying that she's gay, but I knew going in anyway.
Well, the other interesting thing is there's a lot of hints if you're gay that she's gay.
Oh yeah.
But we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Well, one of them is her comic. I mean,
idiosyncratic routine, and they're like holding hands, and
yes, and it's that nod to 90s zine culture.
Mm-hmm.
So they make Holden and Banky like kind of uncomfortable talking about this. They're really calling attention to their straight white maleness and how their books sell way more than theirs, even though theirs are probably smarter and better.
But theirs have Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah. So
as superheroes.
But this is another very self-aware kind of moment.
Yeah.
Of Kevin Smith, which, I mean, there's a lot of those. It's like he's very self-aware but doesn't take the next step into that.
It's like he also sort of like, I think, knew he was a shitty filmmaker, and but that also he was like getting, his stuff, I was thinking today about how this movie probably cost as much, if not more, to advertise than it did to produce. Because I mean, like, like there were advertisements for this movie in comic books as well, and there, that was put into like a small Massachusetts suburban theater on its opening weekend. So I just assumed that they did that because Disney owned Miramax, and like it was, like there was a push for films like this. There's a history of Weinstein having pushed certain filmmakers over others, and Kevin Smith was demonstrably one of the ones that he really pushed at times. And, I think that Smith must have been aware of that, and that, like, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting.
And he was involved in the scenes, and he knew that, like, well, I'm kind of shitty, but,
Okay, yeah, so he's one of those.
Yeah, he knows he's bad, but like he's not.
I'm a dirtbag, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
Well, he's going to make this movie, which shows everybody how great he is.
Yeah, pretty much.
And how he sees everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So Hooper and Alyssa ask the men to drinks with them, and Banky doesn't want to, but Holden is eager, and we learn that the men live in New Jersey, which is kind of a big part of their thing, right? They're not
their identity,
right? They're not from the city, and they all go to a bar, and Hooper pisses off Banky by insisting that Archie and Jughead were lovers. This is hilarious.
Yeah,
it's so funny the way that he is obviously intentionally pissing Banky off.
Yeah, he's got a short fuse.
Yeah.
I don't understand why these guys are all friends with each other.
That's the other thing is, like, I don't think Hooper and Alyssa would be hanging out with Banky and Holden, but at the same time, like, maybe because they're at this Comic-Con together, like, it's possible that they might go get a drink or whatever, but they would never tolerate I don't think they would tolerate the homophobic vitriol.
Yeah. Again, it's a weird fantasy that like, it's like the fantasy, queer friends, the fantasy like person of color friends, it's the fantasy like platonic female friends. I don't think Kevin Smith, maybe he was coming into that stage in his life, but it certainly didn't.
Well, he was friends with Guinevere Turner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, this is why we in the queer community like tend to keep our secrets secret, because we don't trust people to interpret it the way that it really is, and this is maybe one of these examples.
Started really strong in April of 1997 for some reason. Interesting to think of a time when you can think of Archie and Archie comics and like it being shocking that there's like queer subtext.
Yeah, like obviously. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
but at the time, Banky is so upset that Hooper says this. So he insists that they go buy a bunch of Archie comics so that he can prove to them that Archie loved pussy.
Yeah.
And they leave Holden and Alyssa alone. And Holden tells Alyssa that Banky has always been an asshole. So there's a lot of like foreshadowing.
They're getting to know each other.
Right.
They also, they do something that I think kind of like comes up that kind of, when I think of this movie now, it kind of endears me to it. They just go play darts. And there's like, the whole scene is just like one long shot with like a couple of like just brief cutaways. But a lot of this movie that I think is interesting is just like, and a lot of what made Clerks interesting is just like static shots of people just like doing stuff, keeping time.
Right. Yeah, that's very indicative of his style. Like
to the degree that there is style to speak of, like
yeah, you're right. Like just doing shit, keeping time, passing the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Alyssa and Holden they're playing darts, and Alyssa mocks Holden for feeling like a sellout because he's making big money, and it's like, oh wah, you feel like a sellout, but you're making all of this money. And she talks about how she doesn't sell nearly as many comics as men do. So this kind of immediately sets up a power dynamic between them. This is when I started to see, and it could be perhaps that I'm looking at this in hindsight, but there's a lot of hints that Alyssa is queer. I mean, like her entire embodiment, like her swagger, the way that she just doesn't really give a fuck is very queer.
Yeah.
Like she has no interest in performing any kind of persona for Holden, and I think that that's also part of why he's taken with her.
Yeah.
And just all like her dress. I mean, I know everybody was dressing like that in the 90s, but
what did she look like in this scene?
She's got just like a t-shirt, like a band t-shirt. And
yeah. Like white shirt with like blue, like a collar or something like that. Yeah. Blue sleeve, like
she's just very kind of
very
like
90s,
90s dreamboat girl.
Yeah.
And Alyssa leaves, and Holden stares longingly at her, right? He's got a crush. And Hooper and Banky return, and Banky is still on a tirade. I hate him. And Hooper accuses Holden of liking Alyssa. And now we're back in Red Bank, New Jersey. And Holden and Banky are working on two desks across from each other. They're obviously extremely enmeshed and codependent. They're basically a couple.
And the screenplay, if I can,
of course.
If you look at this screenplay, it's almost all just dialogue, because there's not actually a lot of like actual action in this film.
Not a lot happens.
It's just people sharing space, banter, air quotes, banter back and forth. But when they go to interior studio day, it's like we're in Holden and Banky's studio apartment. It's a rented loft style place with high ceilings, wood floors, and sparse furnishings. Posters on the wall, a sort of kitchenette, a hockey net, a big TV with all the trimmings, VCR, Laserdisc player, Sega, SNES, a huge comfy couch, and it's just like this is his fetish here.
Yeah.
It's just like suburban, just like stuff.
It's a fantasy.
Yeah,
it's a fantasy.
It looked like it was like designed for like the real world or something like that. You know?
Yeah, and I have to say, when I first saw it when I was a kid, I thought it was very cool.
Yeah, it does look cool.
Yeah, there's like a door that says sex room.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, which is like the bedroom. So they're basically a couple.
Yeah,
for all intents and purposes. Hooper calls Holden. This is another thing that I don't think would happen. Hooper calls Holden and invites him to a bar called Meow Mix, which is obviously a fucking dyke bar. Like, the name is Meow Mix.
Yeah.
And that night, and that Alyssa will be there.
Yeah, and here's where things get a little confusing for me because, it sounds like he's, like, explicitly, like, setting them up.
That's weird.
Yeah, this is where, like, it's... I wonder for Dwight Ewell, the actor... how he had to kind of like navigate this because, it's just because, we'll get back to, and then there'll be a setup later on where it's just like, the motivation just quickly just like feels like switches.
His character is super uneven.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Smith doesn't know what he wants to do with that character. Like
No.
he changes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Banky wants to come, but Holden doesn't want him to. Cramp his style.
Mm-hmm.
Banky is pissed off. Holden says him and Alyssa had a moment and that she loves him. He's just like kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Like he's just assuming so much about her. That night at Meow Mix, Banky and Holden go together after all, and Alyssa looks very hot.
Does Meow Mix seem like a cool place to you?
Yeah, only because like lesbian bars are disappearing and have been for a long time. So
That's interesting.
I would love to go to one.
Did you?
There's only one in New
Yeah.
York. There's not one. There's like 3 in New York.
I remember Ginger's in Park Slope.
Yes.
Is that still around?
Yeah, Ginger's is still
Okay.
around.
I remember one time, like this movie, like me, like we had one lesbian friend and 3 straight dudes, and like she was
Story
like,
of my life
she was
in high
like, "You're
school."
coming with me to the lesbian bar," and we were like, "Okay."
Ginger's is cool.
Yeah, and like I just remember the bouncer being like, "Are you guys aware what kind of bar this is?"
That's so good.
And we were like, "Yeah." We're with her, you know, and then we end up like there's a baseball game on, and we watched it.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, I talk, this is a film podcast, but I also talk about like personal stuff.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what's partly interesting to me about the film and why maybe I sort of buy the friendship a little bit is because growing up, like I had like my queer friends.
Yeah.
And I also had a pretty like solid relationship with some straight dudes.
And this is like high school you're talking about?
Yeah, high school, but also just like throughout my life. Anyway, so now we're at Meow Mix, which we've established I would have gone to.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a Chibumato poster on the wall. So 90s. People are smoking inside.
Yep.
Take me there. I want to smoke inside again.
And then, well, okay, I'm interested in the singing.
Yes, we're gonna get there.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
we're getting there right now.
Sorry.
So that's a very good scene.
Yeah.
So Holden approaches Alyssa and they begin their typical flirtatious banter. Right. Holden is excited because they're both from New Jersey. They start bonding over. This is why I wanted to go slowly into the singing,
thank you.
Right? Because
my note is that I'm from Massachusetts and I actively avoid other people from Massachusetts. So it's weird to me. You're tri-state. If you meet people who are from your general neck of the woods, do you feel more interested in them, more inclined to hang out with them?
Not really.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but
this is just square peg, round hole. How do we get these shitty characters into this cool place?
True. Yeah, that's a good point. So they're bonding over like knowing all of these same places, right? And
yeah,
Alyssa,
there's plenty of Mallrats and Clerks references.
Exactly. Like Alyssa mentions that her friend fucked a dead guy in the bathroom at Quick Stop, and that's a reference to Clerks.
Yeah.
Right. Guinevere Turner takes the stage and she starts to talk about her band's former bass player, Alyssa. And my note here is, okay, how do these men not know these are dykes? Because there's no men in the bar.
Okay. My note here is that I would fucking hate going to this bar if they're just going to like stop the music and like have this long monologue where you introduce someone.
That's like an in-joke with your friend.
Yeah, the whole bar stops. But it's just a weird 90s sense of community with regard to like where you shop. Like Central Perk, or like there's this like fantasy of just like, and I do think I remember going to coffee shops or bars, maybe where there is like a sense of community, and there is there's like familiarity with people and everything like that. It's not always happy. It's not Cheers. It's not always like everyone's happy that you're in a good mood because they're there, and that. So I think there's that weird fantasy that like, do you know what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's like you could go and everybody would be your friend.
Hey,
yeah,
is this old friend? Yeah,
exactly. But I will say that that does kind of happen in queer spaces.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh,
so,
interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of buy it.
Yeah.
In this movie, like,
yeah.
oh yeah, these women would have like probably known about this band.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
would they have come to see the band?
Yeah.
Or would they have just been there, like,
I think
just because it's Thursday night and it's like time to go to
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both, and probably like there's like a joke in queer women community is like, you know, we all have known each other because we've like either dated each other or like our ex has dated somebody else's ex. Is like everybody's entangled. So it's actually like not uncommon to go somewhere and like know everyone. Like every time I go out, I'm like, dated her, talked to her on Tinder. You know, like it's definitely a thing. It's the community is only but so big.
Yeah.
So I kind of buy that here. So Guinevere Turner demands that Alyssa go on stage and sing, and everyone cheers her on. And Banky says this is so fucking gay, but without really knowing how gay it is.
Yeah.
And Alyssa dedicates the song she is singing to someone special out there, and Holden thinks it's for him. And Alyssa begins to sing badly, but it's also very sexy. And
oh, you think she sings badly?
I mean, she's like not in key, you know, like it's not like a great, she doesn't have like a great voice or anything, but also does.
Yes.
Yeah, like she's
like a reverse Tom Waits.
She's like,
but also actually Tom like kind of works in the way that Tom Waits works.
It's a very kind of Riot Girl sensibility because.
But she's also like, this is what was interesting, kind of like jumping into Joey Lauren M. She's from Arkansas. There's like a Southern twang. I guess she had written this song, but she had originally written it as like a country song. So anyway.
I wonder if we can pull up her singing here.
All right, I should dedicate this, right? This is for that someone special out there. Ready? I'm feeling nothing but